None, that bill is introduced.
Sure.
Any further bill introductions? Seeing none, committee, I do have one bill introduction. It is going to be 24 RS 2436. This has to do with investments from countries of concern. Are there any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, we will consider that bill introduced as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and start today with our first bill hearing. We have HB 2560, and we'll turn it over to David for an explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2560 amends certain provisions of the state banking code, primarily relating to when applications are considered abandoned or expired, and then also allowing an originating trustee to have a principal place of business outside of the state. So Section 1 is removing from statute that the requirement that the commissioner has to deny any application as incomplete. Then Section 2 would amend part of the banking code to then say that if an applicant fails to complete an application under the state banking code within 60 days after being notified that it's incomplete, the application would be considered abandoned, and the application fee would not be refunded, but the applicant can then reapply at any time. The section also then adds language that require a bank or trust company to engage in whatever approved activity under that application within 18 months from the date of approval. If the bank or trust company fails to comply with the deadline, the application would then be deemed expired, and then a new application fee and approval from the Commissioner of the State Banking Board would be required. There is an exception to this for those applications to conduct trust business under KSA 9-1601. Then the commissioner may extend that deadline indefinitely if approval from another state or federal regulator is necessary to engage in the activity, or up to 180 days for a good cause. The State Banking Board may designate the commissioner to determine the completeness of any application that requires State Banking Board approval, or allow the commissioner to deem those applications expired. And then Section 3 is concerning changes of control or merger of a bank or trust company. And that just says that if the commissioner does not act on a complete application to do any change of control or merger within the 60-day period, and the applicant has received all approval from the applicable federal and state agencies, that application would stand as approved. And Section 4 is the part of the trust of the banking code dealing with trust companies. It removes from the definition of originating trustee that its principal place of business be in the state. And then there's a language now allowing either the contracting trustee or the originating trustee to have its principal place of business in the state. So it's no longer required from the originating trustee, but at least one of those would still have to have a principal place of business in Kansas. And the bill would take effect July 1, 2024, and I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for David? Seeing none, thank you, David. All right, up first as a proponent, we have Brock Ryler, General Counsel for the Office of State Banking Commissioner. Brock, welcome to committee, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Hoheimel and members of the committee for holding a hearing on House Bill 2560. This is a bill that we requested introduction on, and we are proponents. Now, this bill does two things, and I'm going to go in order based on the bill, but quite honestly, I believe the second factor is the more important one. First, this bill will allow us to abandon and declare applications that are approved stale. The reason we're requesting this is we're requesting to streamline the applications process. Unfortunately, it does take a significant amount of time for Applications and Statistics Manager Tanner Howard, OSBC leadership, and the State Banking Board to review pending applications and applications that have been approved, but the bank or trust company is not engaged in the activity yet. Under current law, we have the ability to request a withdrawal, but that is a request, not a demand. Our only other option is if a bank or trust company chooses not to withdraw their application, we'd have to go through the administrative process to deny. And quite frankly, this creates a black mark on bank and trust company, its officers and directors, and we feel it is unnecessary. So this is a happy medium where it's 100% clear that we are not passing any judgment on the bank or trust company. It allows us to move on from an application that has not fulfilled all the requirements. This is something that's actually not new to our agency. In addition to our banking division, we have a consumer and mortgage lending division. Since 2017, they have had the ability to abandon applications, and they have found that it's been very successful in getting applications to be fully complete. Only about 2.5% of applications from corporations are deemed abandoned. We've also made a couple other changes to the state banking code just to reflect our ability to abandon applications. And second, I feel the most important part of this bill is we are modifying KSA 92107, which is in our trust section. Unfortunately, this statute creates an unattended inefficiency. Currently, it is required that both the contracting and originating trustee must be located in Kansas to do what's basically a bulk transfer. Trust administration is no longer located in one state. So if a bank or trust company wants to take over as a trustee, it needs to be done on an individual basis, and that can take a significant amount of time. So that statute change has absolutely no safety or soundness risk, and to me, I feel like it's a no-brainer. We need to go ahead and make that change. With that being said, Chairman Hoheisel, thank you for allowing me to present my testimony. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Committee, are there any questions for Brock? Vice Chair Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Hurler. What happens with banking industry? Do companies shotgun applications out to a lot of states thinking they're going to go into that part of the country and then they don't get around to it in certain places? Or what happens on the ground?
Well, you know, situations do change. Sometimes it may seem appropriate to open a branch in one location, but you know, situations change, and maybe that's no longer something that the bank would like to engage in. We don't get a whole lot of applications, maybe like 30 applications a year. So it's not really a shotgun all over the United States, but those 2 or 3 do take a substantial amount of time.
Thank you for follow-up. So you indicated if you get rid of an abandoned application, that's entity would have to report to another state that they failed to follow through in Kansas, or there'd be some mark against them. Did you say that before?
Well, if we denied an application, that would be through a public order, and that would be something that would be reflected on the bank or trust company. But if we denied an application, it's 100% clear we have not passed any judgment on the bank or trust company. It's just they decided they did not want to go through with that particular activity.
Okay, thank you, Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Brock. Up next, we have Will Berman, in-house counsel for Midwest Trust Company. Will, welcome to committee, sir.
Good morning, members of the committee, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to provide proponent testimony for House Bill 2560. I'm Will Bergman. I'm in-house counsel for Midwest Trust Company. It's a Kansas chartered trust company headquartered in Overland Park, Kansas. So you might have noticed over the last couple of years, there's been a little bit more activity when it comes to trust administration and fiduciary administration. There's actually a couple different reasons for that. The largest is we are undergoing the largest transfer of wealth in human history. The baby boomers are beginning to retire. They are beginning to pass on their wealth as well. And so estate plans are happening. And also another unique aspect is it's all liquid investments for the most part, right? People still have real estate, but historically, wealth was concentrated in real estate rather than in investments or cash held at banks. And so as they are retiring, there is more opportunity for trust companies. And what our goal with Midwest Trust Company, the KBA, and also working hand in hand with the OSBC has been able to best position ourselves in Kansas to be able to capitalize, bring that business here, and also to provide the best services to our citizens, but also to provide great services to everyone locally, regionally, and then nationally. And so as we're undergoing this wealth transfer, there's also a second reason why we, hand in hand with the OSBC, decided that we wanted to propose this new, this change to this bill, and that is retirements, right? And also the specialization of different trust companies. So the goal of this statute is to be able to migrate business here in an easy, efficient manner. Typically, when you're trying to transfer who is the trustee on an account, it is can be very simple depending on the document. It also can be very difficult. There's about 8 to 12 different ways in order to move trustee. And what this is trying to do is when a consenting trust company or bank wants to move it to another consenting trust company or bank, with one of them headquartered here, and then the beneficiaries, all the people who are involved with it, are fine with it, it is a simple, easy migration. To illuminate this problem, we had a small rural bank that had a retirement last year, 2 years ago now, and I worked with them. It was only a handful of accounts, about 40, 45. And if we'd had this bulk transfer statute, the problem would have been resolved in just a few months, right? We would have entered into the agreement with the bank, sent the application into the OSBC, and then over a period of time sent out the notices to all the beneficiaries, everyone else involved with it, and they would have been able to transfer it. But without that process, we had to go to rural Missouri, which is where this bank was headquartered, and go in front of the probate court 27 times, get signatures from over 250 beneficiaries, and the process was arduous. It took over 2 years. So we just completed it here recently. And so our goal for this is, over the last couple of years, we've really modernized both our probate code and our trust code to be able to help us better compete nationally. And now what we want to do is be able to capitalize on those changes in an easy, efficient manner by bringing in the assets. And then the other aspect, the other reason why this is important besides for retirements, is the specialization of fiduciary services. So there are other companies that don't want to provide certain administration on certain accounts. For instance, irrevocable life insurance trusts and oil and gas interests. And so we want to be able to selectively piece through that process as well. And that concludes my testimony. If I'm willing to stand for any questions, if anyone has any.
Committee, are there any questions? Representative Dodson.
Yeah, thanks for coming today. In your written testimony, you said retire and pass away. So I like the way you phrased it when you were talking. Are there any downsides to beneficiaries of this? I'm just trying to think through. I mean, I know this streamlines, but there's always something. Is there anything in your mind that might cause an issue for someone in this trust transfer?
Yeah, so that's a great question. One of the things we're always most concerned about is the well-being of our beneficiaries, right? As a trust company, we're fiduciaries. It's our obligation, the highest obligation under the law, to take care of other individuals. And so, for instance, here, what happens if a beneficiary says, no, I've had a great relationship with this trust company over the last 40 years. I don't want to change it, or 20 years, or I have this relationship. Then what they do is they raise their hand. They say, hey, I don't want to go out with it. And then in the back end of the bill, whoever drafted this originally did a fantastic job, because there is a structure in place, right? We're nerds. We're in the trust community. Of course, there's going to be a structure and a backup plan. So what they do is they raise their hand and say, no, I don't want to go along. And then they get taken out of the transfer. So then it's up to the current trustee and the beneficiaries to talk about next process plans. Maybe they'll end up keeping them. Maybe they'll resign. Maybe beneficiary will be able to appoint a new individual. So there is protection for that.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Coach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just asking you, this one gentleman had 250 beneficiaries.
No, that was across the board. There was one that was a spray trust, which technical term, it is where it's to all my beneficiaries, and he was from a fertile family. So there were 70. And so we had to get notices out to all of them living in different places. So that was part of that headache for that.
With this new bill, would you still have to go out to all 70 people?
Well, we'd just be able to mail it. We wouldn't need affirmative signatures. That was the problem. Getting college students to do much during COVID has been difficult.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Committee, we also have written proponent testimony from Joe Carney's Vice President and Trust Officer with the Trust Division of the Kansas Bankers Association. Is there anybody else here that would like to speak as a proponent, neutral, or opponent on HB 2560? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on HB 2560. And committee, we will switch now to working a couple of bills we've previously heard. We are going to start with HB 2101, And we're going to turn it over to David for a quick explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2101. This would be the new Kansas Contract for Deed Act. This was 4 sections of law that would provide that any contract for deed or affidavit of equitable interest may be recorded in the Office of the County Register of Deeds where the property is located. It prohibits a seller from executing a contract for deed with the buyer if the seller does not hold title of the property. It requires a seller to maintain fee simple title, free from any mortgage, lien, or other encumbrance. Though there are certain exceptions listed in the bill. And a violation of this section would be a deceptive act or practice under the Kansas Consumer Protection Act and subject to enforcement under that act. And then there's also the point that the provision that the buyer's rights under contract of deed should not be forfeited or canceled except as provided in this act, notwithstanding any provisions in the contract providing for forfeiture. The buyer's rights under contract for deed should not be forfeited until the buyer has been notified of the intent to forfeit, has been given a right to cure the default, and the buyer failed to do so within the time period allowed.
All right, committee, do we have any amendments for HB 2101? I do have one. David's going to send it out here. And while he's doing that, yeah, we'll turn it over to him to explain the amendment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I just sent Rich the electronic version of the thing, so you might see that in your inboxes here in a second. But while that's happening, I think go through the amendment if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. Sir. So on the amendment, it would be actually in that section 3 of the bill, top of page 2. There would now be some language added that the seller, the requirements regarding the mortgage, lien, or encumbrance placed on the property. There would now, instead of there was an or, then this will now all be and that have to comply with everything in this list. So now is now going to be a C. The seller shall disclose the contract for deed to the mortgagee, lien holder, or other party of interest, and the seller shall satisfies and obtains the release of the mortgage, lien, or other encumbrance not later than the date the buyer makes final payment on the contract for deed, unless the buyer then assumes the mortgage, lien, or other encumbrance as part of the contract for deed.
Maybe that should just popped up in my inbox. It should be in yours now. We'll give you a second to take a look at it. I'll give you some background on this. While we've been negotiating this bill throughout the last year, Representative Probst have been helping him with it. This was a compromise between the Kansas Bankers Association and the Kansas Bar Association, as well as Representative Probst, on just some clarification language. So all folks are on board with this language. And are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, do I have a second? Representative Shu seconds it. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I close on my motion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We're back on the bill. Do we have any further amendments on HB 2101? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Representative Williams motions.
I move we pass 2101 favorably as amended for passage.
Second from Representative Dodson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Representative Williams, close.
I close.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll now go to HB 2561. We'll turn it back over to David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 2561. This was the credit union bill. Would add add 3 new sections of the state credit union code and then make some amendments. The first new section would allow domestic credit unions to do business outside of Kansas if permitted by the law of the other jurisdiction. There would also have a new section allowing the credit union administrator to assess and collect a civil money penalty if the credit union is engaged in any unsafe or unsound practice or is in violation of the credit union code or rules and regulations. The penalty shall not exceed $1,000 per day if such violation continues. And there would be an opportunity for public hearing under the Kansas Administrative Procedure Act, but it could be waived by the credit union. Would also have a new section allowing the administrator to enter into formal agreements with credit unions to address possible safety and soundness concerns. And these informal agreements would not be subject to the Kansas Administrative Procedure Act or Kansas Judicial Review Act and would be considered confidential examination material. And then there's amendments to the current credit union to remove requirements that duplicate certificates of organization be signed and filed with the credit union, and also eliminate some old references to the charter board. There's an amendment to add language allowing a suspended credit supervisory committee member to appeal such suspension. And then there is a removal of language that would require approval by the members of the merging credit union for such merger to take effect. That requires approval by the members of the merging credit union to take effect, and removes the language that requires members of each credit union to approve that. So now it would just be the new credit union members that would approve the merger.
Committee, any questions for David? Seeing none, do we have any amendments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Vice Chair Clifford.
Chairman, I would move to approve HB 2561 favorably.
Seconded by Representative Neely. Any discussion? Seeing none, Representative Clifford.
Mr. Chairman, I close.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now on to HB 2562.
Mr. Chairman, HB 2562 would be the Protect Vulnerable Adults from Financial Exploitation Act. This was requested by the Insurance Department and the Securities Commissioner. This would require that if the qualified person reasonably believes that financial exploitation of eligible adult may have occurred as being attempted or was attempted, to promptly report the matter to the protective agencies, which would be Department for Children and Families and the Securities Commissioner. And then it provides immunity from administrative and civil liability to those qualified persons for making that disclosure pursuant to this act. And then it also allows a qualified person to notify anybody reasonably associated with the eligible adults. And the eligible adults here are the elder persons or those that are dependent adults as defined by statute. So they allow them to disclose, that this potential financial exploitation took place, and then provide some immunity for those disclosures, and then also allows a broker dealer or investment advisor to delay transactions or disbursements from an account of an eligible adult when they're complying with this act, and then provides some procedures for how long that delay may last, with again some immunity when they do those delays of transactions or disbursements. And then also requires broker dealers and investment advisors to provide access or copies of records that are relevant to the suspected or attempted financial exploitation to protective agencies and to law enforcement agencies. And those records would be exempt from the Open Records Act. And then also amends the current Uniform Securities Act provisions that provide grounds for discipline of registrants to include a knowing failure to make the reports required under the Protect Vulnerable Adults from Financial Exploitation Act.
Committee, any questions for David? Seeing none, do we have any amendments? Seeing no amendments, I will entertain a motion. Vice Chair Clifford.
Chairman, I would move House Bill 2562, the Protect Vulnerable Adults from Financial Exploitation Act, favorably.
I have a second. Representative Lewis, seconds. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Vice Chair Clifford.
I close and move my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of the motion, aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Last one of the day, committee, we have HB 2577.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 2577 would give the state treasurer discretion to transfer money certified as unclaimed property to the Keepers Board of Trustees, and then also authority to liquidate such monies for further investment by the Pooled Money Investment Board or for necessary payments to the owners of unclaimed property. Under current law, the treasurer is required to certify and to transfer the monies to Capers, and this would now change that shall to may, and then also allow for the those liquidations at the treasurer's discretion.
Committee, do we have any questions for the revisor? Seeing none, do we have, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Clifford.
Not for the revisor, but anyone tabled. Is there a financial note on this? I don't see it.
Fiscal note.
Fiscal note, sorry. I don't see it under the bill number.
Rich, have we gotten one on that? Yeah. We can have research read out the fiscal note if you guys have it handy. I think we've gotten it, just hasn't been updated.
Good morning, committee. Stephen Wood, Legislative Research. The fiscal note indicates the bill as introduced would not have any fiscal impact on the state treasurer, PMIB, or Capers. It could affect the amount of assets in the fund as in and out, but otherwise would have no overall effect.
It's kind of fiscal notes I like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any amendments? Seeing no amendments, I will recognize Representative Lewis for a motion.
Yeah, before I make the motion, which I will, I just because I drafted the bill. Effectively, essentially what this bill does is gives the Secretary of Treasury discretion to move monies between the Pool Investment Board and Capers, and so in effect, it hopefully will actually enhance our fiscal situation in the state rather than detract from it. And I move the bill.
Okay. Do we have a second? Representative Neely seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Lewis, you may close.
Close.
You heard the motion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Committee, that ends our work for the day. I do want to highlight Wednesday we were on the call of the chair. I was hoping that we'd get some legislation in and ready to go for Wednesday. It looks like that will not be the case, so we will not be meeting Wednesday. Next Monday, of course, is the scheduling conflict. We can't meet next Monday for reasons. So our next meeting will be that following Wednesday. We'll hear hopefully we have at least 2 bills up ready to hear, and then our last meeting will be the Monday following that. We'll finish up with any hearings we need to get in and pass out any bills that we need to pass out. So does anybody have anything for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.